Hello everybody, good night. Good to see all of you on already. We'll get started here in just a minute. Hey, good to see all these names I know and love. I'm joined as always by Evelyn. Hello, hello. Good to see all of you tonight. Should be a fun show. Won't be a particularly long one. As always, we raid Jay on Wednesday nights. And I think it's a fun topic. We've dealt with this topic a little bit in the past, but we got a lot of questions on it still. And so I thought it would be a fun thing for us to jump into tonight. Talking about terrain, or focus on terrain and mini use in D&D. But we're going to talk about theater of mind as well, and then we're going to talk about virtual tabletops. Hey, good to see you, son. Yala, good afternoon to you as well. All I was doing, Robert, was clipping it on my shirt. Nothing more nefarious than that. Happy Wednesday to you.
I see doubt.
I sense the doubt. As always, the doleful tones of Adrian von Ziegler. So we're going to do some polls tonight as well, because I'm going to be asking some questions of our audience, especially those of you that know more about virtual tabletops than I do. I've dabbled a bit in them. Evelyn has worked with them more than I have, so she'll probably handle a good chunk of that discussion tonight. But I know many of you do as well. Hey, Jay, good to see you this evening. We're going to kick off here in just a couple of minutes. Foundry VTT, yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of good stuff out there. There's one that we were kind of talking about in our Discord the other day. Some crazy stuff that's coming. We'll see. A lot of it's Kickstarter. We'll see if it ever makes the light of day, but it might. We're going to look at some of the oldest books in D&D lore today, teaching us how to be a DM. You got it, Ranger. I'm kind of excited for that one. We'll see. Everything has its upsides and its downsides. The gives and takes, as they will. And hey, good to see you, Art of Mike Disney, you handsome devil, you. And you'll probably, if you want to take bets on how many times I'll say the phrase, tail wagging the dog tonight, that'd be a good poll to take. In your car? All right, I like it. Keep your eyes on the road, my friend. My mesmerizing baritone voice will keep you company while you drive. No need to look at the screen.
That's right.
You can see Evelyn and the curmudgeon on the VOD.
I think we could actually do like what is it? Predictions, yeah. You could do predictions as well.
You can, really? Mm-hmm. That's cool. All right. Let's go ahead and kick ourselves off live here, and let me switch over to some music that's not going to run out in 5 minutes.
And find us into a commercial?
Exactly. All right, so that'll work, and turn it down just a touch so you can actually hear us. And Go to the right chat. Boom, we are live. You don't get the exciting transitions. I haven't moved those over to my LMA screen yet. But welcome everyone to Loremaster's Arcanum episode number 29. Jay doesn't know it. We are catching up fast. The fact that he is keeping pace with us doesn't mean anything. We're still catching up because the difference between 100 and 0 is much bigger than the difference between 400 and 500, right? And that's where we're going to get. So we're going to catch him or close enough where it won't matter eventually, 40 years or no. And Jay, I don't know if you heard, we uncovered it last night. I finally realized why Jay Scott is so averse to Thrommel and vampires, and it is because, in fact, he is one, demonstrated by the fact that the man never sleeps and is always on his Discord, always responding, always running streams. It's because he drinks the blood of others. All right. Yes, repping the shirt tonight. Every once in a while I break this guy out. All right, so we're going to talk tonight some fun stuff. We're going to talk about terrain and using terrain in minis and games. I get that question a lot. And even though we have covered it before, we'll try to take a couple different angles on it tonight. And also, we've got a lot of new viewers tonight that, you know, sometimes it's not the same going back and watching a VOD, and you want to talk about it live, so we'll do that tonight. So, we're going to talk about 3 primary categories, terrain and minis, and I've got some examples here beside me. Many of you probably watched the stream last night, or if you've watched Jay's stream, or you watched our Underdark Uprising, heavy use of terrain and minis. Theater of Mind, which to me is inextricable from D&D. I don't think there is any such thing as a D&D game done without theater of mind. That's not D&D. That is, Stratego. That is Risk. When you are playing D&D, you are using theater of mind. But it's a question of how far you go with it and how exclusively you rely on it. And we'll talk about some of that. And then virtual tabletops, which are a fun topic. And there's a lot of stuff out there right now. So let's start off in the chat with a poll and tell us which style you use and or prefer. And we're going to make this an exclusive question, right? So obviously we all blend things, but just for this point, minis and terrain, VTT or ToM, and you let us know kind of what your thoughts are. All right, so let's talk about some of the mechanics of this first. And Evelyn, while you're getting the poll ready, I'll kind of set the table here. Who knows what we're looking at here? Which edition is this sitting up on your screen right now? Is this 1E, 2E, 3E? None of us really know what 4E looks like, so it might be 4E. That's right. So you're looking at D&D Basic, right? Before there was AD&D, this was the first box I had. Which was, warmly called the red box, and then the blue box followed, which was the expert edition. And this has some tips on DMing with theater of mind. We're also going to look at the DM's guide, the original DM's guide, a bit tonight. So while we're doing that, Evelyn, let me ask you a question.
All right.
So, you've experienced all 3 types of play. Everything that you've done with Blue Box, you've seen a lot of terrain and mini work. You've seen theater of mind, really no VTT. You yourself have worked in VTT quite a bit, and of course,
I've looked at it. I've never played with it.
you're a theater girl too, so everything you do, you're theater. So give us sort of your summary of how you view these different mediums and how they play well in D&D.
Well, I would say, as far as the various media work, they all have their different uses. Virtual tabletops, I think, have become exceptionally popular in these days that we are currently living in, where no one can really play with each other in person at the moment, for the most part, depending on where they are. And so I think that has led to a big revolution in the functionality of remote gaming and virtual play. There's a lot of different things out there and new things being developed all the time for how that works. And I imagine that those who actually use them have their very strong preferences on their favorite ones. But for me, I am going back to the most basic roots. When I played at the very beginning back in, for me, in 2004, in my first game, it was all theater of mind. We had no minis, we had nothing. It was just There was some graph paper. I remember there being graph paper, but that was, and you would use like, if somebody had some loose change in their pocket, that would be your placeholders for your, like, where the characters and the creatures were. You know, that was about it. We had dice and graph paper and our imaginations. But I like the incorporation of minis and terrain into the game. I think it adds an additional level of flair, and it can be really fun. And I really enjoy painting minis and terrain and stuff. So that's another thing that is just gives me something that I can do that I really enjoy, and is another creative outlet within the realm of D&D. So I think they all have their uses for sure. It's obviously Dungeon Master preference.
Yeah, no, I think well said. And so we had the question from Mark, 888. You know, he said, "Where's the option for just, you know, minis without terrain?" And you know, and yeah, absolutely. So that I was kind of forcing it into categories to be provocative, because I really want to see where people fall. But we've heard the term graph paper used a couple of times here, and I thought it was interesting to see if you look in the. So everybody sees this guy, right? This is one of the most iconic pieces of cover art in all of D&D. This is one of the pieces that kicked off a lot of the drama in the late 70s and early 80s about D&D being a demonic game, and parents that were shielding their children from it. By the way, we're going to be doing a stream on that here in the next couple of weeks, and I think it's going to be an LMA stream. I'm going to call it Faith and Fantasy, and talk about a lot of what that era was like, and also how the role of the game intersects with these other issues of life, which I think is a great conversation. But I digress. So if you go to the game, where the DM's guide describes the game, shows you the dice, these shapes that we all know well, gives you the linear bell curves on likelihoods for different rolls based on those dice. And then look at the first thing it says. Under use of miniature figures with the game, special figures cast for AD&D add color to play, make refereeing easier. Each player might be required to furnish their own minis, which of course, if you're playing with Jay, you don't have to worry about that, because he's got, you know, 5,000 of them. Figures can be placed so as to show the order of the march in which the characters are in the lead, which are in the middle, and which are bringing up the rear. Further, the players are readily able to visualize the array. Monsters are likewise placed, right? So the way we all do it. So you could just have graph paper, you could have a battle mat with a marker, and you can start to create these visualizations. Now, let's pause there. Thank you, sir. Now let's pause there for a moment, and let's see how that contrasts with pure theater of mind. With pure theater of mind, one of the big challenges, and I pull up an article here. This is actually an article from the D&D Beyond podcast, I think it was, or not podcast, blog. And on here, let me make this a little bigger so you can read. They talk about how you create the combat, the spacing. Let me go down to it here. And I think this is a really interesting point. So even playing in Tim's game on Friday, that was the first time in a while I played in a pure ToM game. And the ever mysterious Tim did a fantastic job, but it still was in my head. Like, you had a lot of this from the players. Now, wait a minute, how many of them are here, and how many of them are on him, and how many of them are on them, and how many are over on this side, and how many are on that side, which is fine, but it just shows where some physical representation, even if it's just piece of paper and marking, which Tim did that in the trap area. If you watch the stream from the Ungodly Hour on Saturday morning on Greyhawk or Underrock Uprising, you'll see when we got to that final trap area, Tim had a map that was drawn out and was showing where the players were and where they moved. So even though it was really a purely ToM game, he was still using visual aids. And this is what the use of minis can provide, because it can get difficult, especially in combat, to know where creatures and monsters are and keep track of all of that in your head. I'm going to take a breath and read the chat while you respond, Evelyn.
I don't really have a response to make.
You can't. You got to make something up then.
I'm sorry. Yeah, stuff. But yeah, I mean, I agree that minis are very, very helpful as far as combat goes. I think that's one of the biggest things that I appreciate about having minis. If nothing else, just to be able to understand. Okay, so I'm here in conjunction with this thing, or how far I have to move to be able to actually engage in combat, or am I about to accidentally run into my fellow party member and possibly risk injuring them as I'm casting a fireball or something like that, so having the minis to actually help with the spatial placement is always I think a very helpful thing, because theater of mind is very good, but it sometimes you can easily lose track of like what's been killed already, or where everybody is placed, or things sound similar enough that you kind of have to have a difficult time kind of judging which one you're talking about at the time. So I think that is the best utilization if you're going from a primarily theater of mind. Having those things there to help with combat in particular, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's the original use of minis was really all about combat. Now, of course, today in the way that we employ them on streams like mine and others that we're affiliated with, we're using the minis to set up role play scenes and all kinds of different encounters in towns and villages. We didn't really think about that back in the 80s and the late 70s. It was, those minis were just to show what your marching order was, where the enemies were, as you said, pulling them off the map when they're dead, knowing which direction your fireball's going and whether or not you're going to blast an enemy. And that's said well here on this blog. He talks about, you describe the situation in each turn. He gives an example. Pommel, you're standing next to Thramond, the mace-wielding gladiator. The mage who casts fireball is currently invisible, but you think you know roughly where he is. The assassin and the spy have ganged up on Punchy, who's about 20 feet away. The evil priest of Bane is still chasing butterflies from Thramond's hypnotic pattern. Right. So this is the DM painting the scene here, but then he says also quickly fall back to diagrams. This is, I think, the point that Tim was making just now in the chat. So you can use your theater of mind, but when the situation necessitates, especially for spatial stuff and for proximity indications, all of that can be very important. Then he talks about using evocative story descriptions, which we'll come back to in a minute. So, dinosaur minis are cool. They just don't belong in my game. So positioning, all of that is really, really important. Now, if you had, if I had one choice, and if one of these is indispensable, it's theater of mind. I don't want to move minis around on a map and say fireball, swing. That's not D&D. I don't want to move virtual tabletop stuff around. If you're not using theater of mind, to me, you're not playing D&D. The question is if you have to be exclusively theater of mind. Now, don't hold me to this, because I really don't want to break down my map that I have here. I'm thinking about going all ToM with my Sunday stream of Rune Lords. But I'm really kind of debating that if I want to do that or not. With the chat, the decision was, I think, that minis and terrain won narrowly, correct, on the poll?
Yeah, it was pretty close. Let me, because I can look at past polls. Let me pull it up real quick.
All right, while you're doing that, haters are going to hate. So while you're looking at that, for the chat, what's the main downside to the use of miniatures and terrain? As I think it's, we've talked about this a little bit before. I think there's a pretty obvious answer. What's the main, well, there's a couple of them, but what's the main downside? What's that?
Cost.
Okay, cost is a big one. Yeah, cost is a big one, right?
They get expensive.
Yeah, it adds up. So that's why you want to, if you're going to do it, you accrue over time, so it's incremental cost. But to me, storage is another issue. Especially if you got a smaller room like this, and I got my home theater on that side, and I got a load-bearing wall on that side, and I got the brick sides of the house on this side. So unless I want to, rip out the foundation, there's not a lot I can do to expand this game room. I got to make do with what I got. So storage, cost.
Yeah.
All right.
It was 8 to 7 with minis and terrain.
8 to 7 with me, and it's
theater of mind coming in second.
And it's a little unfair because it's our crowd, so I think it's already a biased crowd. Right? But okay, so now let's develop that thought a bit further. So if we know that cost, storage, prep, Paint. Okay, I want to talk about lack of imagination, Pat. That's a really good point. Shame for not painting. Oh my gosh, don't we all feel that? I've got so many unpainted minis here. You know, we don't all have the luxury of Bill the Master Crafter, who I've told Jay that's what I want for my giveaway. I still don't have my giveaway for my Underdark Uprising, Jay. But Bill the Master Crafter, Jay always has freshly painted minis. I've got a bunch of unpainted things in drawers, and yes, there is guilt associated with that for sure. Yeah, I want to talk about that flat screen TV extort, by the way. I saw that earlier, and I know exactly what I know the type of thing you're talking about, and that's super cool. I want to talk about that too. But coming back to this idea of the downsides of terrain and minis, one of the things that was mentioned was setup time. Mm-hmm. All right, now, let's take theater of mind for the moment, and let's put theater of mind to the side, because theater of mind will only take whatever setup time the DM decides to invest in actually building out the adventure versus just doing something which is, ad lib. And you can certainly play the game that way. I played many like that when I was younger. So your setup time is really just whatever research and investment you want to make to write out and think through your plots and your options. But with minis and terrain, my perception right now, and I want to know what the chat thinks, especially those that have worked with both, I feel like virtual tabletop takes longer to set up, at least set up well, than minis and terrain. If you've got your minis and terrain, I can have a pretty slick setup like what I have here. I'll most of you probably saw this last night, but I just turned this guy around. I was going to add another cam. So I can have a setup like this done, I don't know, if I've got everything in my mind of what I want to do, it's maybe 20 minutes to get all that on the table and ready. Whereas in the virtual tabletop stuff, and maybe it's just because I'm not good at it, but when I've gone in and I've played with it, it takes a minute. And then I can move things around, I can slide them quickly. When I watch some of the VTT stuff, it seems like it's right click, change that icon, this one's dead. Right click, move this here, where I can just snatch a mini off the table. I can knock one over, I can move a wall. It feels like I can actually move with less setup time on my terrain than I would in a VTT. Now, let's do that as a poll. Agree or disagree? Terrain can be set up and moved and manipulated more quickly than VTT when done well. Yes, no. All right, and let me see what the chat's. VTT prep, Pat said takes twice as long. Robert said it depends. VTT takes longer. That was my sense too. You smell beef and cheese. Nice elf reference there. Yours is a large chest painted like, oh, that's sick. Extort, I've got to have you on there. Yeah, so.
Okay, poll's up.
All right, the poll is up. Is terrain faster and easier to use than VTT? And yeah, there is no depends option. You got to choose one, right? We're forcing answers here to see where if the DM's organized with their maps and fluent in the books, tools, it's not bad. Yeah, I agree. It's probably not bad. Most definitely, the more complex functions take even longer. More options. Totally loaded. It gets easier the more, of course it does, and it gets easier the more you work with terrain. The first time you build Dwarven Forge terrain, or first time I work with this miniature building authority stuff, I'm like, where does this go, and where do these pieces go? But you do these builds a few times, and you're like, quack, and you know where your minis are. If you're new to your minis, you're like, well, what do I have? Now I can think of a character, and I know exactly which mini I want to go find because I've done it. So it's true of anything in life. The more you do it, the easier it gets. My cousin, who is named John, has put a lot of mark in his digital maps. The old Tupperware salt and pepper shakers made great towers. They did make great towers. You need canned modules in fact. Okay, well, you don't need canned modules, right, Jay? You can build your own stuff in Fantasy Grounds, or am I wrong on that? Is that only Roll20? Mark has not used VTT, don't have any terrain unless you count salt shakers, mugs, and kids' box, and that's fine. Honestly, if I had none of the terrain, I would go back to what I was doing probably 10 years ago. I had minis. I just had one of those erasable battle maps, and I'd take my marker and I'd map out on that battle map, and it was theater of mind, minis and monsters for spacing. And we had great games like that. So I think it's not too far. You got a little bit more time to vote. Zeraphanon said setup time can be done 2 months earlier, then you just log in and ready to go. You know what? That's actually a really, really good point. I'm going to come back to that in a second. Use Roll20. Terrain is more fun, takes a large investment. Definitely a large investment, definitely storage space. Physical is nice. The website is offline. You still have your supply right. If you use terrain like a military, boatload grab and go, Will Devar. Okay, so we're actually going to have, the next time, I'm going to do a follow-up on this, and we're going to do a deep dive, and I'm going to ask Will to come on and talk to us about the use of VTT, and I'm going to ask one of our resident pure ToM guys to come on, and we're gonna really hash this out deeper. So this is just a quick overview of the topic to set the table, no pun intended, for a much deeper conversation. For cons, you can preload everything in the pre-gens, just log in and prep. I'd use a whiteboard and a camera before I do VTT. Yeah, I'm kind of that way too. Use it from con to con. All right, so I'll give an example. So what was the total, Vivi?
It was 9 yes and 6 no.
Okay, so you know, a strong advantage there for using the speed and ease of use. So I don't think ease is necessarily an argument for VTT, but cost, certainly, storage, certainly, and I think Zeraphanon brought up the really good example there of you can do the work in advance and you can leave it. So for me, as a terrain DM, and I'm on a more limited table, so the table I have right now here is 4 feet wide and about 6.5 feet long, right? Jay has, I think, an 8x8 or 8x6. He's got a much bigger table. So if he wants to set up, you know, I can set up 2 or 3 large scenes on this. He could set up 4 or 5. But I guarantee he has to move that stuff around as he's going between his different campaigns and his different, 8x8, that's what I thought. Move it around as he's going through his different campaigns. He's got to pull the stuff off. And he only has whatever the space that he has on the table. Then you also have the visualization challenges, fog of war, right? So last night, they didn't see this whole thing when they started out. So I have to use things to obscure, well, I don't have to, but I choose to use things. Thank you for joining us, Adam C. Dahl. You have to use things to obscure your terrain, and that helps the players, you know, maintain that sort of fog of war experience. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add that extra camera for a second here. I'm going to get rid of my Loremaster's Arcanum logo up here. Y'all know where you're at. And I'm going to add another cam just so I can talk about this and you can see it. So we're going to go video capture device, add source, working in slobs here. Add a new source. Battle, all right, add that source, and we're going to choose, figure out which of the multiple Logitech Brios I have this one is, and that's the right one on the first try. Let's go. All right, so let me extend this out a bit. Got the wrong resolution chosen and all that, but it'll work. So this was not something the players saw when they first got in last night. All they saw, you know, so I used angles with the camera. They saw this. But then I also use black construction paper. I talk about these a lot. If you go to like Dwarven Forge, if you like what they do, they have these metal plates. This is metal. I can put a full stack of terrain on this, and I've got them over here. So I've got a tavern scene right here. This was the scene where Alcott was in the library. See, so I can have these all stacked over here, and I can just pull them off as I need them and put them on the table. What this is avoiding, rather, is the limitation of only being able to use what I have on the table and having the players see everything that I'm using all at the same time. So I do think, as Zeraphanon said, that you have, you know, Josh is exactly right, that with a VTT, as a DM, I could go in, I could create 10 different scenes. I could work on them whenever I want to. I don't have to worry about space constraints. And then I can just click and load them as they come up. If I've got, you know, 3 or 4 different campaigns like we run here, I can be, right now I have to switch this whole table out, different campaign, different setup. So in that case, the VTT does give me a lot more flexibility. Evelyn, comments?
I was gonna say, and it's even better when the party completely decides to not even go where you have things prepped for, and then everything that you've built is just off the table.
Right, and that's where, you know, I think the true theater of mind stuff comes in too, right? And you've seen that happen a lot in our games. Let me go here. A lot in our games, the players, I do play a sandboxy style. You know, I have my major plot points. I may think I know what they're going to do, but they're in a sandbox. If the players decide to go right when I thought they were going to go left, I can just kill them. I mean, no, they can do that, and they have the right to do. They have the right to do that. And so, as a terrain player, you as a terrain DM rather, you work with your terrain, but you never constrain the player with the terrain. You never let the tail wag the dog. You know, the game is about the game is about the game. It's about playing. It's about imagination. It's about player freedom. And I believe even in a sort of scripted style Twitch stream with minion terrain, there's a lot that a DM can do to keep the play style free, where the players aren't just being funneled down. Now, I think one-shots are different.
Right.
You know, if I'm playing a one-shot for a con, I got to kind of move them on the rails to a degree. But I think in an open campaign world, you can still have your VTT, or you can still have your terrain and minis, and then you can quickly pivot to pure theater of mind when you need to. So looking at the chat, it's good to see you too, Grape Ape. And you use more terrain freely for the main boss fights. Yeah, I think that's, I do a lot of that sometimes too. John, are you going to touch on your LED light board? You know, I could talk about that a little bit tonight. I've done a previous LMA where I really dove into all the tech that I use here, but I don't mind repeating that another night. Again, things are always updating, and sometimes people don't want to go back and watch the VODs. They want live interaction, so I'd be happy to do another one on that. I won't get into that too much tonight. Yeah, for me, the game is about the person at the table. Yeah, it's about, D&D is about interaction. It's about meeting with people that you like to hang out with and, tell stories with and have fun and create memories and get ticked off at each other and argue, about rules every once in a while. That's the essence of D&D. All the rest of this is the accoutrement. But I think it's very important. At least for me, there's a reason that I put this time and this money and this investment in, and it's not just for the window dressing for a stream. I was doing this before I ever thought about being on Twitch, because I felt I was able to really tell my stories using these tools. In a con one-shot, there should be a general understanding. Yeah, that's exactly right. You got it, Robert. Gary Con, where we're all going, right? Exactly. It's about killing stuff and taking loot. Mike is the Diablo player in the bunch. No, you're exactly right. All right, so yeah, let's do John builds me a cool gaming table. So Extort, let's talk about what you've got there for a second. I think I know what you're referring to. And so you have a flat screen TV that you have turned over. You have it mounted like in a mimic chest, which that is super cool. And you build terrains then which appear on that display. Now there are actually softwares out there designed to do this. I think there's a company that'll build those tables for you. And that, I think, is a super cool idea. I've looked at that. Then you could put weather effects on it. You can have snow blowing across the screen. You can see the fire breathe out of the dragon's mouth. So there is some pretty cool stuff you can do with that. But again, it seems like Extort isn't, I would have to believe that is on par or maybe even more than the setup time associated with VTT. Well, I guess if you had base terrain, so maybe you've got your desert terrain and you've got your forest terrain, they're just preload maps, you can move a couple trees around and throw an environment effect on it probably pretty quickly, I'm guessing. What did I say? Wait, you don't use water pistols to let your players know. That's cool. So actually, that's another fun topic. Like, pop in the chat, what other sort of physical effects have you introduced to enhance your game, whether that be a theater of mind game or a terrain game? So as an example, you got handouts, you got burning candles, of course, you got sound effects and lighting and all the stuff that I use. Slapping with rulers. That can create a great thunderclap. Absolutely. Pizza, yes. We've all used pizza as an effect. Yeah, handwritten letters to players. Who among us, or maybe I'm the only one, but who among us hasn't printed out on parchment and burned the edges of,
From our Lord of the Rings game, from when we went to Lake Forco?
Yes! Oh, you still have it!
I still have it.
Can you read to him what it says?
Well, it's all in Elvish.
That's exactly right.
I don't remember exactly what it said.
So, those kinds of handouts, dice bounced off the players. A tennis ball is good for that, too. We made ourselves an old-fashioned flag. Yeah, that's right. That's super. You got to post some pictures in the Discord next door. Go into our Discord and go into, what would be the best place for that? I guess just in the OOC channel, maybe, or on the Crafters and Minis.
The Loremasters channel.
Yeah, LMA channel. Yeah. Go in there, post some pics. We would love to see that. A bag of canned spaghetti with a metal key in it. All right, so yeah, Robert, that's a whole other topic. So I use Sirenscape, but Sirenscape again. You guys, I'm going to say it for the second time. The tail can't wag the dog. Mm-hmm. If you're lighting, if your effects, if your terrain, if you watch my games. If there's one thing I strive to do, it's to keep the game moving so that the players aren't waiting on me to do my cool thing with, my VTT or with my minis in terrain or with my lighting or wait, here, wait. I want it to feel integrated so that I'm not losing that sense of immersion. When I've got these tools set up, if I know where they're going and I just want to toss off a fireball, I can be talking and I can just hit a button and they're going to get hit with the fireball. If I want to change the lighting in the room, I can just tap a button. And there are ways to set this up and it's not that difficult. And you can make your Sirenscape much more usable using some tips and tricks that I can show you. I'd be happy to do that again. But again, I digress. That is not the topic for tonight. So back to other things that you've done. Yet killed off pretty quick when it became clear it was fighting with my spoken. Yeah, exactly. You really have to work on the balances, player handouts, pizza. Okay, yes. Who else has done that? Pop that in the chat. Have you ever done the turn out all the lights in the room and maybe just talk to the players in the dark, or maybe throw up a flashlight, camping style? I've done that. I did that with my family game with my kids when they were 8 and 6. They peed in the chairs and they've been having nightmares ever since, but it was a lot of fun. Those are very fun things to do. Yes, exactly. Okay, so back to the DM's guide. I thought this was fun in the DM's guide here. I don't know if you guys read this while I was busy gabbing, but handling troublesome players. What a prescient thing this was. Some players will find more enjoyment in spoiling a game than in playing in it, and ruins the fun. Those who enjoy being loud and argumentative, or pout or act childish when things go against them. Those who use the books as a defense when you rule them out of line. Simply ask them to leave and do not invite them to participate again. Has nothing to do with the topic, but I liked it. There is a reference in here, I don't have it handy right now, that talks about using graph paper and using the graph paper to create the visualizations in your terrain. So this stuff has been around for a very long time, and I think it really does enhance your game. So coming back to this idea of, John, I bet your family has nightmares of drown belittling them in their dreams. They've been through a lot. I started my son role playing when he was 6, and it was D&D. And of course, I was a little cautious. There weren't like any of the gimbal type scenes or the drow eating scenes for my 6-year-old. But yeah, they did grow up with it in the same way that I did, and he's still playing today. Biting can't be out of the question. Minis are great for group bonding through painting. Yes, absolutely. That is so true. So, As we get ready to wrap up here in just a few minutes, we're going to talk through just a couple more points, and then we're going to go to Lord Gazumba. So let me talk about the terrain that I have, since the topic tonight is terrain. So you all have seen, of course, the Dwarven Forge materials here. These are the old school resin Dwarven Forge pieces. Now, here's a cost savings tip. You can find a lot of this old stuff on eBay, and while it's still pricey, it's nothing like buying it on, brand new. You can still get some of these resin sets new on Dwarven Forge. But if you watch things like Facebook Marketplace, if you watch eBay, you can pick up sets of this stuff for much less. Same thing with this. This is the old resin cavern set. And I really like this. In fact, Jay actually was the one that encouraged me to pick up this set. And what's nice about this, compared to the newer style, is it tends to come in bigger chunks. So you can move whole sections, whereas on my, hold on here, let me rudely turn my back on the audience. On the newer stuff, your tiles tend to be sort of this size. It allows you more flexibility in building, which is cool. And they do have some bigger pieces, so I'm not saying that's, but they tend more to this. Whereas these older builds, they have these bigger pieces. For example, this is a quarter of a room with a wall and a door all in one piece. So again, for the terrain DM, this means I can do quick builds of large rooms with corridors in just a couple of seconds without having to go through all of the, the micro building that happens with the newer Dwarven Forge stuff. Jay has 4 sets of that? Yeah. I'm working on it. All right, so then over here you have more Dwarven Forge stuff, coupled with some Whiz Kids. I think this came from the Avernus Descent, or maybe I forget which way. These are Whiz Kids. I have a bunch of these statues from one of those modules, and they're cool. Then what's nice about, of course, with all the Dwarven Forge stuff, you have many of them that they light up. You can put green orbs on them. This is a Whiz Kids. It's meant for using Magic Hammer, and it was so funny that it came up on my Friday night stream, but it was also a part of my on my Tuesday stream, and that was just it was coincidence. It wasn't something that was pre-planned. So all of this terrain here is from Dwarven Forge, with some of the the other assets coming from Whiz Kids. If you come back over here, you'll see I have a combination of these types of things. So this is from Miniature Building Authority. This is one of Jay's sponsors, and no, he did not give me a deal, but it was still cool stuff. And the Miniature Building Authority stuff, it's a lot like the old Dwarven Forge. It's hard. It's not the kind of thing you're just going to throw into a box or into a suitcase and take with you. But the detail on this stuff is crazy, and these are pretty heavy sets. And so you can see I've got a lot of that stuff up there, and then I've got some stuff that I just got on my own. Like this is actually foam, and this came from an Etsy shop, a guy by the name of Terrainify. He's pretty cool, and he built this stuff is much more durable and easy to kind of work with. And then I've got more Miniature Building Authority stuff back here, which is like including all the wicked castle stuff. And I mean, this thing probably weighs 15 pounds. This is a monstrous piece from Miniature Building Authority. Yeah, 3 dimensions does make a difference. It really does. It creates a lot more sense of immersion. But again, it takes time, and it is expensive, and it does take storage. So you don't have to have any of this to have a fantastic D&D game. And in fact, it can get in the way. The tail can wag the dog. And yes, I know I need a haircut, so I don't need that. I don't need that in the chat. Then, here's an example of a tavern scene that I already had pre-built, sitting there ready to go. Towers ready to go. And then I have other stuff in the boxes, like this is the Hellscape. And because this newer stuff from Dwarven Forge, what they call the Dwarvenite, it's super durable. You can drop it, you can throw it, you can put it in a backpack. It's very easy to move around and work with.
Mm-hmm.
So that is super simple.
I have a good question in
Go ahead.
chat for you, John.
All right.
From SetMonkey13.
Chris?
How much work? Yes, from Wick. How much work is it to go between the setups for Sunday and Tuesday and then back? Do you ever forget how things were set previously?
Great, absolutely fantastic question. So I'm going to answer that in a second. Just doing the rest of the tour here. More of the Dwarven Forge stuff. It's kind of dark up there. Let me get out of the light. More of the Dwarven Forge stuff up there. More of the Cavern stuff there. Half builds that I'm working on there. I need to get a light when next time I do this. And then I've got foliage and trees up here. You guys can't see any of that with my horrible lighting, sorry. And then more over there. So I have this kind of tucked away all over the place in the room, but I'm using a wide variety of different sources and materials. And I find, whoops, I just actually disconnected my HDMI or my USB cord there. All right, so to the question. Thank you for that question, Chris. How much time goes into switching back and forth? Well, as you know, my Sunday to Tuesday stream, there is another critical difference. It's not just the scene on the table. I completely changed the table because I am working with this room is, so this is hopeful for all of you that have limited space. You can do a lot with it. This room is 12 by, I'm going to say 12 by 11, maybe 11 by 11. This is not a large room. So it works pretty well when it's just me streaming like my Tuesday stream where I'm the only one in the room, right? So it's just all the virtual world out there and I don't have to worry too much about space. When I run my Sunday stream, I have 4 other people in the room with me. So it's 5 of us. And when I've run my my 4th Age stream, I've had as many as 6 other people in the room with me. So I've had 7 people in this small room all around this. This is a 48-inch table when I don't have the extender on it, and it still can work. But what I didn't build it. What my wife built, she's into woodworking. She's got a second layer here, so I pull all these beautiful. I didn't even talk about these. Yes, this is a good thing to discuss real quick. Rabbit, squirrel. All right, so these are Frontline gaming mats. But there's a lot of battle maps out there. What I like about these Frontline maps, they're like mouse pads. They're thick, they're very durable, see, and they don't scratch, they don't wrinkle. They're like super heavy duty. And then I thought last night, this is how naive I was. I thought there was a chance, Evelyn, that the party would get out of the dungeon and be ready to go back outside. So I was ready at the break. I was going to do a quick switch and put you back outside in the snow. So I had my snow map sitting under my seat.
That hopeful thing.
just to be ready. No, it did not smell bad because I have clean, well-groomed people here and good air conditioning, Tim. So back to the answer to the question. If it's a fairly straightforward build, I'm going to say the physical setup takes me 30 minutes all in. That includes pulling the battle maps off. I have a separate extender that I bring in here, which is it's like a Lazy Susan table that sits on top. And then I pull off, I've got 4 different wheel cutouts with different terrain on them that I set on top of it so I can rotate it. Then I have to go through and do my build on top of it for the minis and the terrain setup. So I'd say it takes probably 30 minutes. And the more complex the setup and the build, the more you have. But that's not all that's involved, of course. When you're doing a stream, you have all kinds of other setup that has to be done. I use different views. I have totally different scenes. So like when you watch GHA on Tuesday, you have a red screen, you've got flames and fire. That's a totally different setup in Slobs. It's a whole different set of scenes. You have one player out like Shorewind last night. Because of the way I do it, I don't do it some would call it the smart way, some would call it the lazy way that Jay does, where he just slaps everybody up on a Zoom screen. And so if somebody leaves or drops, it doesn't matter because you're just seeing them. That works really well because it's the most flexible, easiest way to do it. But the downside is you can't do iconography and names next to them, and new people who come in are like squinting and you can't read the Zoom names on there. So it just depends on how important the visuals are for you. And obviously I'm teasing. It's not. it's not smart at all. It's definitely the lazy way. But when you do it the way that we do it here, that one player being out, you have to do a lot of other stuff. Like I had to go upstairs and set up another PC and bring that in with a blank screen so I could still occupy his spot and have all the alignment right on the cameras. Otherwise, I would have to go through and change all of the views and move all the boxes around, and that's not fun either. So, you know, I'd say aside from the actual act of the DM prep, right? So the story, the NPCs, all the things that you'd have to do as a DM anyway. All the setup that goes into a blue box game is probably an hour to an hour and a half just to get all of the mechanics of it right, all the Twitch stuff and all that stuff behind the scenes. And then you have all your DM prep on top of that. That's just a wag. I should start timing that, actually. That'd be a good thing to know. All right, any other questions or comments from the chat?
Let's see. Mike actually asked, what is the fourth age?
Oh! Mike!
We have not done that in quite a while.
Okay, so the Fourth Age campaign it was a once a month campaign. It's based on the Fourth Age of the Lord of the Rings. So it's after the destruction of the ring. It's after the War of the Ring. It's still in the Tolkien world, you know. But it's you know, King Elisar is already on the throne. Sauron is gone, and it's what happened after that. And so I built a story on that, actually using some really old material from Middle Earth role-playing MERP. They had a complex campaign set basically called the Lost Palantir, and I took it and chopped it up and heavily modified it, but I used that as the basis for a campaign that I mean, like I say, it's been running for 4 years now, but we have not played since last fall.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And we're down to the very end game, so we really got to get that group back together. So Fourth Age is the Fourth Age of the Lord of the Rings campaign that I've had running here for about 4.5 years. All right, you should make one for each possible combination, one of us being gone. Well, yeah, that's easier said than done, Rory, because the more of those you create, the more you start bogging down your Streamlabs. And so there is.
And then Slobs hates it and stops working, and then
yeah,
it's great.
I know what you're saying, and I have done that to some degree. So, for example, it's going to look wonky when I do this, but I've got multiple chat screens set up here for LMA. So if I have 2 people, or this would be if I had 3. If I had a third person here, all those windows would be lined up properly. If I have 4 people, then all those windows would be lined up properly. So I can do a limited amount of that, but when you go to, and I'm not going to switch to them because it'll really mess it up, but if you go to a completely different scene, and those scenes are much more complex, where I have all the icons and the pictures, and I have 4 4K cams coming in, I have 8 mics internally here, I've got all these inputs and settings and background layers and web frames. You'll start to, it doesn't matter about your PC. The applications themselves will start to grind to a halt. So you have to really think about, you know, what you want to spend your resources on. Merp, yes. Fable 42. Yeah, well, they started it after me. Chris ganked that off me, and you could tell him I said that. Chris, I like Chris. Chris is my friend. Yeah, but they saw. I think he stole my Fourth Age idea after the last session when I debuted my Ancalagon mini.
Oh my God.
And my Ancalagon mini, the party face. This is actually Caladrax from the Reaper Bones. It was like their first or second Kickstarter. But I painted him. If you don't know who Ancalagon the Black is, do yourself a favor and Google it. Smaug, the original, you know, the Hobbit dragon, would probably be maybe 1 toenail on this dragon. This was the Mountain Slayer. This was, he fell upon the city and the tower, everything was destroyed. This dragon is the dragon of all dragons. And I showed that, and then like 2 weeks later, Chris had an LOTR campaign. So I'm teasing, Chris. All right, any other comments or question? Have you ever tried the cardboard dungeon? Oh, yes, I have. And in fact, I've got something over here. If you will entertain the audience for a moment, Evelyn.
Yes. I'm actually gonna drop the picture of the different dragons of Middle Earth into Discord really quickly. So if you guys are curious what they look like, see campaign Lord of the Rings. You can see exactly what this dragon that we're up against is. Let's see.
Moving your Wi-Fi router while you're doing a stream is never wise. So
Yeah.
I ordered some. This is not exactly cardboard. It's like a laser cut board. But this was kind of a cool thing. It's like an in. So it wasn't. Whoops. I don't have the top on it right now. Wasn't too terribly expensive, and it's pretty detailed. So you can get stuff like this as well to work with. I mean, it's definitely going to be less expensive than your resin or your dwarvenite type stuff. MDF board, a lot of stuff made from foam. I've got some homemade terrain. It looks nothing like Satcher Scorns, but it works for me. So I've got homemade terrain. I've got, I'll give you an example. As a terrain DM, I've had some fantastic moments where I just like last minute, what am I going to do? I remember my other campaign, which is the one I run with my family, and that happens rarely now because my kids are off in college and they're working, but when they do come home, we'll play that a few times a year. And that is a super high-powered campaign. That's in the Pathfinder world. They're actually running through what's called a Mythic Campaign, and it's ultimate sort of like Monty Hall style D&D, but it's fun for the family. And they were actually approaching the gates of the ineluctable prison, which is Baphomet's lair in the Ivory Labyrinth. And they had a scene where they were going to be coming up to the door there, and like I built these walls. These are just basic wood cutouts if I want an in scene. They were about to go through those doors, and I had the gates. I had a cool set of gates, but I wanted something elevated that they were looking up to, and I just happened to have this 4x4 sitting up there. So I grabbed the 4x4, I put the gates on it, and I put my, where's he at here? Did you get it up in the Discord? Yeah. Yeah, so you have a simple set of tiles leading up, and then you have a nice gate atop, and then you stick this guy on top of it. And actually had a rock there first, and they didn't know what he was, and they knocked on the doors. They tried to pull the doors, and the rock moved. And next thing you got, boom, you've got terrain, and it's off and running. And like I did that in like 35 seconds on the fly. So yeah, you got to be an improviser as a DM if you're gonna have some freedom for the players. All right, so you could play remote. Yes, I've heard that too, Josh. I've heard that too.
Maybe, just maybe. Play a remote game.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Thank you. Okay, so let's see what else is in there. Thank you for the sub. Oh, I've got you hidden by because I just put that camera on there.
Prometheus.
See, that's an example of the challenges with streaming. You got your order of alignment. So I added this cam just now, and it's covering up my alert box. So I'm going to pull that camera underneath my alert box, and that won't happen again. All right, so we've talked terrain. We've talked different types of terrain. Here's some other little things. So you guys may have seen me do this. I love these little clear glass risers. And I got these on Amazon. I had to hunt for a while for the ones I wanted. They've got some different styles. I specifically wanted these completely clear cylinders. And so you can use these for different effects, including, of course, flight. And I think they make a nice, great addition to your game. And they come in. Oh, hey, thank you, Phantom. Man, Robert, you never stop giving, dude. Thank you so much. Oh, by the way, be watching here in the next few weeks. Robert is going to be coming on with us, and we're going to be doing a follow-up to our series on the best class of all, the Paladin. And Robert's going to come in. So, like, having things like this that create that three-dimensional combat, I thought that was really cool in the Rise of the Rune Lord session with the Stone Giant battle atop Hook Mountain, and when Irda, took flight, the winged
the giant
when the winged Azamar took flight and was fighting with the Frost Giant, who happened to be also a Stone Giant rather, who was also a necromancer, so he took flight. and we had a 3-dimensional aerial battle. That kind of stuff is just, it's fun to do, and it doesn't always look the best, but it gives that nice visualization. Yeah, sorry, Geek Puppet. I know that's I put a poll up on that and I got crushed. Like 90% of the chat disagreed with me. So, all right. So let me close with coming back to theater of mind. So I've talked a lot about terrain tonight. I've admitted I don't know a lot about virtual tabletop. I do want to show you something, though, which I think is going to be this kind of tech, whether this is it or whether it's going to be something else. This is going to be game changing. Let me bring my monitor back up. All right, so we talked about this in our Discord, and somebody already mentioned it a moment ago. And let me just pull it up here. I believe it's called Tailspire.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? Not Tailspin, Tailspire. All right, so this is, I believe, currently sort of in dev. It's on Steam. And this is a new style of VTT with incredible detail, realism, and lighting. It mirrors minis, and it gets you effects. And I think, yes, this exactly, Iculus, is going to be the best of both worlds. So you have the ability now to create incredibly detailed things which would not even be possible with minis and terrain. I mean, you can get close, but spell effects, I mean, just freaking look at that. Now, you know, again, this is vaporware. Let's see if they actually come up with it. But creating this kind of scene, this is just stunning. So how do I see myself using this kind of VTT in the future? Does this make 3-dimensional terrain go away from me? Oh, heck no. No, this will always be part of my game, but this can be another addition to my game. You guys have watched me. You know I like using pictures. So last night, here, let me pull up a fantastic picture from last night. We're gonna raid Jay here in just a second. So nobody panic and leave. But you know, when you get artwork like this from Pat Draws right in the middle of your stream, so I like using these visuals, but having a tabletop or virtual tabletop that can render images like this, well, then what I can do is I can build my terrain. So let's say my party is back in Hamlet, and I've got my whole table covered with Hamlet. But then I want to have the welcome wench, or I want to have the smithy, or I want to have the chantry. I can build that in a VTT that does stuff like this. And in both of my physical and virtual games, for my physical players, they can see this big old monitor I have up here. I don't know if you guys saw that earlier. I'm not showing my camera, and I removed it. Anyway, I've got a big old monitor up here that everybody in the room can see. That's what you guys are looking at right now. So my physical in-the-room players can see it, and all my virtual players can see it. So I really see VTT taking off like this in the future as an addition to what you've got. Last thing I'm going to say on Theater of Mind, you may have noticed last night, and I do this as often as I can, and I don't always have time, but there were points last night where I was referencing descriptive notes like you would get from a module, but I wrote them out myself. So even though the party, let's say, you know, when they got to this point here where you saw the temple, you know, I'm not just saying this is what you see. I'm saying as you step into the room, several wonders compete for your attention at once. The hammer still spins slowly above the altar, and from this distance, you can feel the waves of magic emanating off of it just as brightly as the emerald light does. To the other side of the altar, a ghostly dwarf stands vigil, each of them more noble and more substantial than were Balaam and his brother. These were dwarves they met from the week before. A huge iron-bound wooden chest sits next to the altar. Torches glow softly around the room, casting small amber pools of light that push against the verdant haze that covers the room. To your right, a massive stone sarcophagus is surrounded by gold and glittering jewels. A hollow voice echoes from the dwarf on the right. You are not the... So, Theater of Mind is still part of terrain play, and you can do that extemporaneously, which I do a ton. That's like 99% of what I do is off the top of my head in terms of descriptions. but when you can take a little time, you can actually craft some really cool sort of additional narratives where details might be forgotten. There was a lot last night if you watched, not just what they see, what they smell, what they hear, what they feel, the dampness on the skin. The more you bring these senses in, the more you really create that sense of story and immersion. All right, so we're done for that. Any other questions? Anyone wants to see it? Yes, okay, thank you so much, Extort. I'm gonna go do that right on. You know what, I don't have time because I gotta raid Jay. Well, we could take just a minute. I'm gonna pull the Discord up for anybody that wants to see this. And he put it in the LMA channel. Okay, all right, so this is the Blue Box Discord. If you're not in here, you should be. You're missing a lot of stuff, including seeing what people ate for dinner. But this is, okay, right here.
The regular
all right,
chat.
so here we go. Here's Extort's table. Oh, that is slick. That's exactly what I was imagining. So let me get a, what did I just do there? Oh, I just opened the original. I didn't want to do that. All right, hang on. Mouse, where are you? Don't you love when your mouse disappears? All right, then here. Very cool, very cool. And there's Extort right there. He's 14. No, I'm kidding. And it's on wheels and it has a cover.
Nice.
Yeah, and then here, so you can play indoors or out. That's awesome. Look at that. All right, and I want to see a top-down shot. Yeah, that's the money shot. Look at that. Yeah, I was teasing. Let me open this in original size, and let me pull that up there so I can zoom in on it for everybody. And just this is super slick, right? So you can have your terrains built out. So this is probably a map they could just load, so it doesn't take a lot of time. But then you can pop a feature on it, like whatever this structure is here. And then can you also create on this weather effects and failed to print? Oh, it's a treehouse we still use. Oh, it's a failed print from Jay. That's funny. And can you run weather effects on this Extort? Yeah. So that's a really cool style of setup as well. So anyway, guys, thank you so much. Don't leave us. We're going to raid Jay right now. And as always, if you've watched tonight and you haven't followed, we got one question for you. What are you doing?
What are you doing?
Come on, give us a follow, and let's give Jay a little love. And again, thank you to everybody for all the support. Best community in all of D&D. And more of this can be found inside our Discord. We're always chatting about D&D stuff here. All right, we are raiding Lord Gazumba. He's only got 7 right now. He's just getting started, so you're getting in at exactly the right time. And 5, 4, 3. Bye-bye, everybody. Much love from Blue Box. We'll see you soon raiding.